Day 2 of training camp is in the books. The San Francisco 49ers finished their second day, not without any controversy as usual with training camp. That's Brian Peacock. I'm Jason Aponte, and we're going to break it all down now. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Brian Peacock. This is another episode of Peacock and Aponte. Peacock and Aponte definitely sounds better than Aponte and Peacock. Like, no matter how you slice it.
It does. It does sound better.
It definitely does. You know what's funny, real quick, before we get into, well, first of all, forget all that. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad there's actual stuff to talk about because the dead season of the NFL is the worst season of all in life. And there's so many things that you kind of find interesting from time to time, but a lot of vacant space to fill. And now there's almost too much stuff to talk about. Like there's mustaches and there's Aaron Rodgers vacations to Egypt, right? And then there's holdouts and there's hold ins, and Tua showed up to camp apparently with the Dolphins and then bailed out again, which was an interesting technique that I don't know if I've seen that before. And I guess Trent Williams kind of did the same thing, the little okey doke on the 49ers. So he's holding out. So, and obviously there's players on the field, so we can overreact to a couple of training camp practices, which is my favorite thing to do every summer.
100%. I think nothing screams training camp like making sure that we make declarations off of practices with notepads and make sure that we understand that these certain guys are just dead in the dirt right now making the 53. Some are already locked. Some are already Hall of Famers, and they haven't even put the pads on yet. But I think obviously you can tell that we're joking based on the fact that, yes, there is a lot to talk about right now, especially in 49ers land. So before we get into everything, guys, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell for when we go live. This is going to be a weekly thing now. We are back in the saddle. There's a lot to talk about. First, though, I wanted to talk about, I forgot, Brian. Oh, you said the dead period. Yeah, it makes you focus in on that stupid game that's not real called baseball. Like, I mean, who cares about that? I mean, I don't think baseball is a real sport. I don't know whoever does. Like, that's really
baseball is my favorite sport. It was always my favorite sport growing up. It's the sport I played. I still play old guy slow pitch softball once a week when I can, and it's a lot of fun. At this point, it's more important to have a beer after the game than to actually play the softball game. But I love baseball. I love the sport. But football is more fun to watch. Football is more exciting to talk about. Football is more interesting with how the rosters fit together and the team building nature of it. And I still love baseball, and I'm still a fan of baseball. I'm a little bit more journalistic when it comes to football because I think football is just a more fascinating sport. And I understand completely why it's the most popular sport in America, because it is fun and it is fascinating. But I love me some baseball too. I don't love it when the Giants are extremely boring to watch.
Don't love it when the New York Yankees just get swept by every team that comes in.
At least the Giants won one from the Dodgers this week.
The New York Mets have beaten the New York Yankees 4 times out of 4 this season, and that is like the first time in the history of the Subway Series that it's happened. But who cares? All right, let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about, which is contract negotiations, whether they're holding out, holding in. I say sometimes I'm holding in by just staying in my house. Sometimes holding out means you're not going at all, which is what Trent Williams is doing. So let's just start there. Trent Williams holding out. And look, I think it's fair to say that, Trent Williams has earned whatever sort of raise that he wants, especially when you look at the way I think the Christian Darrisaw contract kind of put things into hyperdrive, even if he already had it in his mind that he wanted a raise based on like who's making the top 5 money. Obviously, Penei Sewell's in there. But the Darrisaw deal kind of really puts it really higher up. I actually have a good feeling about this, and I think that if there is an extension, obviously the salary cap ramifications are going to be good. What's your take on Trent Williams wanting a bag in an offseason before they have to pay Brock Purdy a bag?
The bag getting in the NFL is fascinating right now to me because how teams, owners, and GMs have allowed players to get free agent money without hitting free agency.
Uh-huh.
So and it's easier with someone like Christian McCaffrey because he doesn't make as much as Brandon Ayuk. He doesn't make as much as Trent Williams. But Christian McCaffrey's like, hey, I'm the best running back in the league. Someone passed me up, or someone's about to pass me up. I should get a couple more $1 million. And the team's like, oh, okay, sure, Christian. Here's the most money that's ever been paid to a running back. Here you go. Trent Williams gets passed up by a few guys, and he's still great. And again, this is nothing against the players that are asking for it, but he says, you know what? I deserve the most money because I'm the bestest, and I want the most money right now, and I'm not going to show up until I get that. In past years, in past eras of NFL football, the teams would say, okay, don't get a paycheck. See you later. And they would play hardball. Teams don't play hardball anymore. They're like, oh, you want the most money? Okay, here's the most money. Right? That's kind of how every single one of these things goes. Since Le'Veon Bell, I think it's the last guy I could think of that a team really played hardball with him and allowed him to just go away. And teams aren't willing to do that anymore with players. And now the league is thriving. And I think there's so much money that's a big reason why. But for the 49ers, we have all of these players. It's like, okay, if we're going to pay Trent the most and Christian the most and George the most and Fred the most and Nick the most, maybe Debo and Brandon the most at the same time at the same position, and then Brock the most, which is the most money you can spend is on a quarterback. At some point, you're going to run out of cap space, right? And it's not nothing because they've already asked Kyle Juszczyk to take a pay cut, which he was willing to do.
And he was hurt by
Eric Armstead to take a paycheck, and he was not willing to do that, or take a pay cut. And he was not willing to do that. So now he's on another roster. So there are some implications, as fake as the salary cap seems at times, and as much as the salary cap goes up. And I don't necessarily want the 49ers to be the team to play hardball with any of these guys because they're all great players and I love watching them play and they deserve all the bags that they want. But I want a team like the Cowboys to play hardball and like let Dak walk just because I want to see what it looks like because teams aren't willing to do it anymore.
Right. 100%. I think from obviously with the salary cap, I try to stay away from that because I'm not well versed in that. And God bless anybody who is. I can't stand math, and let alone I cannot stand funny money math, which with the NFL, right?
That's like why we talk about sports because we hate math, right?
Right. 100%. I was told there would be no math involved, right? Like that's the whole point of being a podcaster, right? Is not having to do math. But I will say this from just a roster standpoint, right? And this is part of the crux of the argument with Brandon Ayuk is you're not helping your Super Bowl window by letting the best left tackle in football not play for you, right? Furthermore, everyone has complaints about this offensive line. Now picture this offensive line without Trent Williams. And it seems to me that the 49ers have an idea of what that may look like and will avoid that at all costs. And God bless them because, yes, that would do, I wouldn't want to say irreparable damage, but it would really hurt your chances of being a Super Bowl contender, right? Like you can't lose Trent Williams, you can't lose Brandon Ayuk.
And Trent Williams, smart. He sat there in April, watched the 49ers not draft an offensive tackle, which helped his leverage, right? Because the 49ers can do some things. And his offensive line coach, Chris Foerster, after the draft is asked, why didn't you draft an offensive tackle? He's like, I think it's smart to pay the guys and spend the resources on the guys that have the balls in their hands and put points on the board. And we can develop smart, tough guys. And then when you have Trent Williams on one side, it makes it easier to help on the other side if you need to. Well, now you got to help on both sides if Trent Williams is not around. And so Trent Williams is really important for the rest of the offensive line playing up, in my opinion. And with no Trent Williams for a game or two, you can get away with it. And he usually misses a game or two every season. But without Trent Williams for a full season, with the rest of what they have on the offensive line, it goes from being maybe a 15 to 20 offensive line in the NFL to darn near 32 in the NFL with no Trent Williams because he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. And so a lot has to go right. The ball's got to come out quick. Maybe you're not running the ball as well because don't forget how many huge runs come off the left side of that offense. And you get George Kittle over there next to him. And probably the second best offensive lineman the 49ers have is Aaron Banks. When he was healthy, he was banged up a little bit last year and I think didn't play quite as well as he did the year before. You can get a lot of yards. And think back to all of the big Christian McCaffrey runs. A lot of them are on that left side behind Trent Williams. So you start taking that away as well. And now your quarterback's getting hit. And then there's a trickle down effect. So now you have more third and longs. And now your offensive line can't block as long on those third and longs. And you start to paint a picture that is uglier than I want to paint right now on the second day of camp.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm sure that this gets done, but you're absolutely right. Trent shrewdly sat around. Also, too, I want to add a little bit more. I think when Trent was contemplating retirement, and I think he's been very vocal about that, I think he sees how efficient this offense is, how good Brock is in this offense, what they were able to accomplish. And he's just like, hey, you know what? I can kill two birds with one stone. I can continue to try to chase a Super Bowl with this team and continue to get paid because it's well deserved. Like, don't get it twisted. This isn't a aging veteran who wants a bag out of the door out of honor. This is still Trent fucking Williams. And it's not like, hey, we want you here for, it's not, hey, here's for the years of service, here's an extra bag on the way out. No, it's still the best left tackle in football. So like, I don't want that to be lost on people. And again, any extension I feel like right now would obviously open up some more money, cap rollover, all that stuff. Does that mean Brandon Ayuk? Does that mean maybe Mooney Ward comes back? Does that mean Lenore, right? And the 49ers have kicked the can down the road where restructure. I don't know what the ramifications would be if Trent Williams were to retire under a new extension, which possibly could even be even better for the 49ers, in which whatever year it is, they can wind up just like pocketing that money and rolling it over. Again, I don't know the cap, but it is Trent Williams. And I think that whatever it is that he wants, I don't think that the 49ers are in a position to even scoff at the idea. And I think he gets anything that he wants at this point.
Yeah, I think a big one was Penei Sewell too. So Penei Sewell got a big bag this offseason, $28 million per year. Trent Williams is a little over, I think $21 million per year right now. And he probably saw that. He probably saw the PFF grades and was like, oh, wait a second. I'm the second highest graded tackle now. And Penei Sewell's the top guy. No. I'm still the top guy. Young man, you're going to have to scoot over for a second. I'm still number one. I'm going to get the most money. And I'm the best tackle in the league right now. And he talked about his legacy. He wants to be known as the best ever at the position, right? He wants to be a Hall of Fame guy. And so he's not talking about being second place. And I think that's a big part of it. And he backs that up on the field. And he absolutely deserves the money. And for the 49ers, it's not a big deal when you're paying a tackle until you're starting to pay everybody else that I mentioned a little bit earlier. The 49ers have to pay a lot of guys at the top of the market. And I think you do start to back yourself in a corner if you're the 49ers when you give everybody the money, right? And so, if I'm a good player on the 49ers, why would I not hold out when I see everybody else hold out and get money, right? And Christian McCaffrey wants money, gets money. Trent wants more money, he gets money after he's already paid a lot, And so that's what's interesting to me. And it's happening around the league. A lot of guys getting paid free agent dollars before they become free agents. And teams aren't even willing to let guys hit free agency anymore. And I think it's pretty fascinating. And I love that guys are getting paid more often too. And as long as the 49ers can fit it under the cap and do what they want to do, I hope everybody gets paid. And I hope Trent gets paid because he deserves to be the highest paid tackle in the league.
And don't think that that's not important to Trent, because we saw in the last negotiation that he literally had the 49ers add on like about an extra $100,000 or whatever amount of money so he could clear David Bakhtiari. So don't think that that's not something that's on his mind either at this point.
Yeah, it was literally like $1 more.
Yeah, like
he's almost kind of petty in a way.
Exactly, 100%. So don't think that that's not on his mind either. So offensive line talk, always going to be that. Quickly before we turned into the other stuff, a little bit of a funny thing happened today. And again, it's hard to have sweeping statements and takeaways on day two. But Brad Graham of the SF9ers, friend of the show, friend in real life, said that John Feliciano was taking some center reps out there, interchanging with Brendel, and Burford was out there right guard. Is this shaping up to be a little bit more of a battle that we think at center, or is it maybe Brendel's not all the way fully back from the injury?
Yeah, I think it's that Brendel's going to take some time off and they're going to bring him back slowly from his injury. And clearly the number 2 center now is John Feliciano. And I think it's more important that they have Feliciano at center than having Feliciano at right guard. But my question is, and I wasn't there at camp to know the answer to this one. And Brad, if you're listening, let us know, or anybody else that was there. So when Feliciano's playing center, who's starting at guard in this place? My question.
Burford was actually the one with the ones.
Okay, so it's Burford at right guard, not Dominic Pooney, because that was my big question: is where's Pooney going to line up? And I assume because really, and someone talked about this in the chat here, saying that with all the guys that are getting signed, you're going to have to start to say bye to Charvarius Ward, Deommodore Lenoir, Debo next offseason. I think Aaron Banks is another one. I think the 49ers draft this year in 2024 was all about developing as rookies to be ready to start and not really play a big role as rookies, but to be ready to start. Like Aaron Banks, we saw him We were like, oh my God, this is a bust. This guy wasn't even suiting up his entire rookie season. And all of a sudden, he replaces Laken Tomlinson. I think that's the plan for Pooney. And if Pooney's playing left guard behind Banks, I think that backs up that the 49ers plan is that, they can't pay Trent Williams $28 million and pay Ayuk and pay Brock Purdy and then go pay, top of the market guard money either. So I think they're going to let Aaron Banks walk, and Dominic Pooney, they're hoping, is going to prove that he's going to be ready to step in and be the starting left guard. They're going to have to move on from either Ayuk or Debo and hope that their first round wide receiver, Ricky Pearsall, can step in and be a starter at one of those two spots. Talanoa Hufanga going into a walk here. Malik Mustafa, a nice little start to training camp, right? Can walk in and be the starting strong safety. And then one of those corners, I don't think you're going to pay both Demo and Ward. So one of them is going to walk. And guess what? They drafted a second round corner in Bernardo Green. So I think the 2024 draft, and I know a lot of people want to see rookies in year one. I think it was all about 2025 with those 4 picks.
Yeah, and remember, all of those guys, 4 and 5 year players, all of that type of stuff. And it's funny, offensive line isn't the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's a big topic in 49ers land, 100%, right? And I do think that I have a little bit more of an optimistic view of this offensive line, regardless of how it shakes out, being that Brock is expected to take a jump. I know I expect him to take a jump with knowing where to get the ball in his timing offense. If guys are getting open and separating, that's how you mitigate some of the pass protection stuff. Pass protection isn't solely based on guys blocking the guy in front of him, right? Quarterback has to know when to get the ball out. Quarterback has to sense the pressure. The people have to get open. It's one of 3 things that usually fails that leads to sacks. It's never one thing always, right? And it's hard to not see a jump from Brock being able to say, you know what? I know a free rush is coming, but I'm going to throw the ball through it, right? And understand that's where I have to go with it. Sometimes when you hold the ball a little too long, that's when you get sacks. So I think it's a nuanced conversation with pass protection, but I do understand that the 49ers have basically the Avengers everywhere, right? And they feel like, yeah, you've invested in Trent, which is great. I mean, obviously he's the best left tackle, but man, it would be really nice to see you invest a little bit more in the other spots. And it gets 49ers fans' minds wandering about, if we had a better offensive line, could it have been the reason that they finished the job or this and that, or Brock is healthy? And, that's the part, it's the one spot on this roster for 49ers fans that continues to be a point of contention, because it feels like the spot that it just, at the biggest moments, it feels like it comes down one way or another, whether it's a blocking assignment missed or just straight up getting beat. So I do think it's interesting, and I do think that it's interesting how the 49ers have kind of talked about, like you said, with Forrester. We just want to get the best players who can carry the ball, that type of thing. And it's just there's other teams that, what did Jim Harbaugh do this entire time since he's been there, right? It's just, we're going to load up on the offensive line and we'll worry about the rest of that stuff on the other way. It's interesting to see the team building and roster building philosophies around the league and how the 49ers go about it with the offensive line.
And Trent Williams is a big part of it and I actually thought he was older. I was surprised to see he just turned 36. I thought he was getting up there a little closer to 37, 38 years old. He's still 36, which isn't crazy. It's about the same as 28 in running back years too. So I guess as far as, tread on the tires, Trent Williams isn't very different from where Christian McCaffrey is in their careers at their respective positions.
Right. He might as well be 35 as a running back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. and especially, he's toted the rock a lot, going back to college. He's been a dude that's been a workhorse for every team he's been on. And with the offensive line, it's not so much about, because you're never going to be able to, you're not going to have 5 first rounders on the offensive line. Nope. You're not going to pay 5 offensive linemen big time money. So I get the idea of we're going to pay one guy a lot and hopefully develop some smart, tough guys to fill in the rest. And then we're going to pay some other players at other positions around the roster. I totally get that. And Kyle Shanahan talked a little bit more and said very similar to Tim Kawakami this week on his podcast on the TK show. Go check it out. There's a lot of great nuggets there. Mm-hmm. Pretty much said the same thing that Chris Forster did. And so I don't know if Forster is just towing the company line, repeating what Kyle Shanahan was saying to Forster in the draft room, was like, hey, can we get a tackle? Can we get a tackle? And Kyle's like, no, I think we should spend our resources on guys who touch the ball. And Chris Forster, being the good company man he is, like, okay, noted. And then when he's asked about it, he said that. So I wonder if that was, I can't imagine an offensive line coach not wanting a first round offensive tackle, right? But obviously you don't want to force offensive linemen either. The big thing for me is okay, you didn't have 3 first round picks in a row. Would there have been an offensive tackle in that mix? I bet there would have been. maybe another defensive lineman. The 49ers had to, either go cheap or find some free agent veteran replacements at some of the spots where they would have drafted players if they didn't do the whole Trey Lance trade up and spend 3 first rounders in a row on one guy who's not on the roster. So the last first rounder before Ricky Pearsall that's on the roster is Brandon Ayuk, right? There was nobody in between. And at this rate, Pearsall might be replacing Ayuk next year if they can't figure out this Ayuk contract. But so I think it's more of a talking point, and they're just given a reason to give a reason more so than they're like, I bet internally they're like, I wish we could have done more at offensive tackle, but we didn't have a lot of picks and the right player wasn't there for us. Like if the 49ers traded up, I wouldn't have been shocked at all if they drafted one of the tackles. They just kind of weren't there for him. And so they went wide receiver at the end of round 1. And they don't want to throw their own players under the bus either. So they're not going to say like, well, we're garbage at tackle. That sucks. But what are you going to do? We drafted a wide receiver anyway, because we thought he was,
of course, he was number 1 on the board. We always wanted him.
Yeah, exactly. We're surprised he's still there. Right. Like, really? Okay. And it's nothing. It's not like to say they had a bad draft or anything, but when you start looking down the road, you're like, okay, 4/5 of the line is just, you're getting by and you're okay. It's not a problem. But then if you lose Trent, does it become a problem? And Trent's going to be gone at some point, even if he's not quite as old as I thought he was. Can you envision Trent Williams still being around in 2026 and playing at the high level that he's at right now? Maybe not. And at that point, you got to develop yourself an offensive lineman, and sometimes it takes a year too. So if you don't draft it in 2025, I don't know when you draft the guy who's going to be ready to start for you in 2026 at offensive tackle. And so that's kind of where it'd be like, all right, it just reminds me a little bit of, remember the I think it was the 2018 draft? Yeah, it must have been the year before Bosa, when they're like, hey, I don't know, Cassius Marsh is pretty hard to beat out, right? And you look at John Lynch, you're like, what are you saying right now? The pass rush is complete garbage. And then the next offseason, what'd they do? They went out and not only drafted number 2 overall Nick Bosa, but then they went out and traded a second-round pick just for the right to sign an injured D Ford. And clearly they realized that we got to have a lot better players at these positions. So I wonder if offensive tackle might be one of those big things where, in an offseason to come, maybe it's not next year, maybe it's the one after, all of a sudden they're like, well, we just got to spend everything we can this offseason on offensive tackle because we're going to be garbage at it if we don't. And I think, obviously, and we all know this, and I think Colton McKivitz probably gets too much grief from 49ers fans because he's not Trent Williams.
Right.
You can get by with him when Trent's on the other side, but you should also be trying to compete and upgrade him if you can, especially with a cheap, controllable, cost-controlled offensive tackle, because those guys get really expensive too.
Yeah, and I fully believe that they were going to wait around for Roger Rosengarten, and the Baltimore Ravens just jumped him, and then they had to make like a complete different change to that. That just felt too much like that felt like what they were trying to do with McGlinchey without having to spend the 9th pick. Right? Like,
did you hear the interview with Eric DaCosta, the GM for the Baltimore Ravens, talking about that very situation? He thought that, and I think it's because they liked Rosengarten and they drafted Rosengarten. He thought the Kansas City Chiefs, who were calling them too for a trade, wanted Rosengarten. I think the Chiefs, obviously the Ravens wanted Rosengarten because they drafted him. I think the Chiefs wanted Suamataia the whole time.
Yeah, they did.
And I think the Niners did want Rosengarten. And who knows, maybe Suamataia, if he didn't go 30 or 63 or whatever, maybe the 49ers would have still drafted him over Renardo Green. Probably not. I don't know. They didn't seem too worried about it. But I think and there was a trade that they had just about agreed upon, and Kansas City called Baltimore back and said, never mind. I think that's because they got the 49ers to do a trade, right? So they said, well, we want one of those tackles, and if we get to the Niners pick, then we know they're not going to go back to back, in which case they might have gone back to back. But I think if Kansas City would have gone up to Baltimore's spot, one spot ahead of the 49ers, I think they would have taken Suamataia, in which case the Niners would have taken Rosengarten. And then I think the Ravens would have been asked out, and they would have been upset because those tackles went back to back, just trading back 2 spots. And so I do think that was what happened in the draft there. And it's interesting to see like a team that's like, you really love Rosengarten, but you don't like Suamataia, or you really like Suamataia, but you don't like Rosengarten. I liked Suamataia a little bit more just because I thought he had more projectable traits than Rosengarten, as good as Rosengarten worked out pre-draft. But they were both worthy of clearly late second round picks. It would have been fascinating to see if things went a little bit differently, who the 49ers would have ended up with. And I would love to know what all those teams' draft boards look like, because how it's the domino effect of just one little thing. Like, okay, if KC goes and trades up one more spot, well, now the 49ers have Rosengarten instead of Bernardo Green. And does that change the third round? Then do they not get Pooney? Now they're going and chasing and trading up to get a different corner. Maybe Bernardo Green's still there and they trade up to get him too. So there's a million things that could happen after that from just one little thing. If Kansas City decided to go up one extra spot with a deal that they pretty much had agreed upon too.
Absolutely. Hey guys, over 25 minutes in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell for when we go live. We're going to keep talking training camp, but we've got a special guest. We've got a guest. We've got someone who is boots on the ground, someone who is there, someone who got to ask Nick Sorensen a question, and we're going to talk about all that right now. And that's our buddy from NBC Sports, Jordan Elliott. Jordan Elliott, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, the splash cousin himself.
It's going, man. I apologize for my on-the-go setup here. I left Levi's a little bit later than I had expected, but it's because it was such a fun day full of so much football. What else could you ask for?
Hey, Jordan, were you inspired by Kyle Shanahan and Nick Bosa to grow yourself a mustache? Am I seeing that, or is that just a sunlight
So,
thing?
Just for the record, I did it first. All right, let me just throw that out there. It wasn't
before
them. Kyle's is much better. Mine is awful. So I basically I don't grow a lot of facial hair. It's just not really, these two gentlemen above me, great beards. I could never pull it off. So a couple months ago, I just kind of, I let it grow out a little bit. And I'm like, let's kind of see where this can go. And it kept going and going. I got to the point where it's middle of summer and I was like, I'm just going to keep it until I get fed up with it. Hasn't happened yet. And then Kyle, CMC's wedding, he comes out with his great stash looking like a James Bond villain. And I'm like, oh man, like mustaches are back in. Like I'm capitalizing at just the right time. So yeah, we'll see. I'm trying to let it rock as long as I can, but I'm just waiting until somebody's like, dude, it's time to let it go. Like you got to shave it off, and I'll probably reluctantly do it then.
Jordan, I don't know who's going to be the person that's going to be able to say it, because I love it. Like at this point, I'm used to it. I've seen you without it so long that now I'm just used to it now. Like I can't picture you without it now.
I mean, we'll see, dude. I'm just like, if I get rid of it, it's going to be like a 3-month process getting it back. So that's where I'm like, I really got to commit one way or the other if it happens.
Well,
I'll never shave my beard.
Going, by next training camp, you might be able to have like a Jason Aponte, Brad Graham thing going on, and really just start growing the whole thing.
Maybe 10 training camps. I don't know about one, but maybe 10 from now. I'll get to that point.
Jordan, thanks, man. I know you've been really busy today. So a little bit of football talk. We're going to bounce some ideas off you and everything. Talk to me about some of the people that stood out for you today as you were on the field today watching training camp unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest ones that stood out to me are big name players, which, I know during training camp, people want to know about the, rookies, the battles, the maybe lesser known players. But for me, the two guys that stood out the most were Fred Warner and Debo. Fred Warner blew up the first 2 plays of team period in the backfield for would-be losses. There's no pads. It's really hard to run the ball in practice when you don't have pads on. So I do think that caveat is important. But Fred Warner, just like, the guy practices as hard as any player I've ever seen, and his energy day to day is always there. And you could tell he's a guy that's out there setting the tone. It's day 2, so it's, pretty fresh for most guys, but as training camp grinds on and you start getting into those dog days of August, it's obvious how much Fred Warner's voice and energy level is going to help that defense, just the team in general. He tackled Christian McCaffrey too on one play. It was the only tackle of the day. He tackled Christian McCaffrey, and for a split second, it was kind of like, oh, like, here we go.
Did Kyle shut the whole practice down? Yeah, I was gonna say, did Kyle?
So he popped up and immediately diffused the situation. You could tell that there was a lot of mutual respect between the two of them. But just in the back of your mind, right, when you see him go to the ground like that, it's like, oh man, like I've seen this movie way too many times. Like we know what's gonna happen next. But thankfully, it never escalated that far. But you could tell he's a guy that even on days where they're practicing with no pads, second day of training camp, 7-year veteran now, which is crazy to think that Fred Warner's entering his 7th season in the NFL. His energy level's always there. And then on the other side of the ball, Debo's in fantastic shape. I think the only questions I would have about him being at that all-pro level again this year is just injury luck. Like if he's able to stay healthy this year, that 2021 season is going to be really hard to replicate, but I do think you're going to see the Debo Samuel that was viewed among the most dynamic weapons in the NFL this year. And he's going to kind of regain that status as one of those disruptive playmakers that can house a ball from anywhere on the field at any given time. He looks like he's in that explosive shape again. I didn't think he was terribly out of shape last year, but you could tell there's a massive difference between the way he looked at the beginning of camp last year to this year.
Does he look faster just because he's wearing the number 1 now? Is that part of it too?
It's so sleek. It's so perfect.
You're absolutely right, Peacock. Like he that aesthetic alone, like, immediately boosted him in the rankings. Like, if we're ranking wide receivers right now, that number alone is getting him in the top 10, in my opinion. The visor was an extra addition as well. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the footage. Whoever the 49ers equipment manager is the best in the league. Like, the visors that these guys are rocking out there, Jennings had a really cool one too. It's boosting them. And, it's always back to that Jerry Rice thing, right? You look good, feel good, play good. The Niners look about as good as they can. So I would expect the playing good to follow shortly after.
With Jalen Moore jumping in the first team for Trent Williams at left tackle, are the 49ers in trouble if Trent Williams has a prolonged absence with this team? I know I saw reports from day 1 where he got beat a couple times. Did he rebound a little bit on day 2?
Yeah, so it's really, first of all, it's really hard to catch like every play for every player. So I always try to voice that when I am, sharing things that I saw, that this is what I was able to catch. I admittedly was trying to keep my eyes kind of all over the place and just kind of get a general sense of what was going on while also handling some other responsibilities, posting social clips and stuff. So I didn't see every single rep Jalen Moore took, right? Like, I can't sit here and tell you that I graded every single snap that he had and can give you an informed opinion on that. But I can tell you there were 2 reps that really stood out to me that I came away really impressed with. And they both came against Nick Bosa, and they both came against an inside spin move that Nick Bosa has worked really hard on the last few seasons and has become a really good weapon for him, where he's able to really sell that stem up field and then get that inside leverage because he's able to so quickly transfer his weight, spin around, and catch a lineman off balance. And Moore both times was able to immediately counter, take away that inside rushing lane, and then drop his anchor. And to do that in general against a guy like Nick Bosa is really impressive, but to do it without pads is where I'm like, okay, like, that's something that's really impressive that you can build on. That's something that'll give you confidence. And, I think the ability's there. Nobody's going to be as good as Trent Williams, right? So to answer your question, like, yeah, if Trent Williams is out, I think they're in trouble, but I don't think they're in trouble necessarily because Jalen Moore is the one that would be filling in for him. I think it's just Trent Williams is so damn good that anybody filling in for him is going to leave you in a bad spot.
Jordan, I wanted to ask you, we were just talking about it on the offensive line too. It seemed like John Feliciano was flipping in and out at center, right? And obviously Jake Brendel's coming off of an injury, so that's probably a way to like ease him back in. But Spencer Burford got the bulk of the right guard moves, right, with the one-on-one. Is that a little bit of a shock for you? Because Feliciano did play so well, and I think a lot of people would point to his departure in the Super Bowl being like one of those unfortunate incidents that led to the 49ers not finishing the job.
No, it's not. And I think that it comes back to like an organizational philosophy thing where the 49ers have confidence in their ability to draft, develop guys, and, carve out sustained success with guys that they kind of have in their homegrown, talent pool. And I think that when you look at things like in a vacuum, like at times, yeah, I think that Feliciano was better than Burford. I think that's why he ultimately ended up landing that right guard spot throughout the playoffs. You also have to look at where they're at in their respective careers. Somebody like Burford, if you can get him on the right track and have him be a starting level right guard, he has a lot more tread on the tires, right? Like, Feliciano's been in the NFL a lot longer. The odds of him playing as long as Burford could for you aren't nearly as great. So I think it's kind of a long-term thing you're looking at too, where it's like, hey, if we can really figure things out with Burford, because I don't think Burford's like terrible. I think he gets scapegoated for a lot of stuff. And I think obviously having a play in the Super Bowl that came at a really bad time made the perception of him worse than it was. I just think that he's a player that had, a few inconsistencies here and there, but he's a tremendous athlete, right? He's an incredible, he's incredibly agile for a guy that size. And I think that he's somebody who, when you start looking at what this team is going to look like 2-3 years from now, if you're the 49ers, you can envision him in your plans. 3 years from now, can you be confident that John Feliciano is still going to be playing in the NFL, let alone on your team? I think that's where it gets a little bit muddied. So I think that that's, for me, what would make the most sense if you're the 49ers, is really trying to carve out something long-term rather than it being like, Burford right now I think is better than Feliciano, and I think that's why he's getting those reps. And it could have something to do too, just with, as you mentioned, maybe not putting too much on Feliciano's plate while he's also helping handle the center duties. Maybe when everybody's healthy, they slot him back into that spot. But I also think that Burford would be going into year 3 this year. It'd be way too easy to write him off. I think that he is an incredibly talented player. It's just a matter of really fine tuning the consistency day to day, week to week.
Brian, real quick, I wanted to pull up the transcript because Jordan did get a chance to ask Nick Sorensen a question, right? 2 questions, actually. As I'm reading through the transcript, your first question was, what's the biggest difference you've noticed in terms of preparation, meetings, and day-to-day stuff since assistant head coach Brandon Staley arrived compared to the last couple of seasons? And I think Sorensen gave you a pretty good answer in saying everything's different because I don't know what it was like to be a coordinator at that time, and we're both, fine. I think that one's fine. My issue comes in with the next one, and I'm going to read it verbatim for what he says because I was attributing it to what I was telling Brian. It's like if Brian asked me, what did I have for dinner? And I say, dinner's an important meal, and it's definitely one that you should have. That's not answering the question. So, like,
he's not wrong, though.
That. He's not wrong, but I mean, it's not answering the question. So you asked, is there any, like, major schematic changes you've noticed or that guys are working to implement that you have had to work through since Staley's been here? Oh, no, we talk through stuff just talking football, just like I would go talk to offensive guys. But we do what we do, and he may have some suggestions that we talk through and kind of see some things on film where we're studying tapes of other teams and stuff like that, but it's just good to have them. Jordan, that's got to be the biggest word salad and nothing burger I've ever heard. Like, that literally just did it. Like, I mean, and look, I understand you did a great job. I'm not trying to, like, put you in a position where you have to make any statements about what Nick Sorensen said. Purely my opinion. Like the views that are being shared right now are solely mine. I just feel like he didn't answer anything about that. And I think there's ways to not divulge too much about scheme while saying something instead of that, which it felt like that was not even an answer to the question that you gave.
Nick Sorensen more agile than Spencer Burford sidestepping.
Yeah, that's the DC dip and twirl if I've ever seen one.
I respect that there are certain levels of secrecy that you guys, these guys want to maintain, right? And I can appreciate not wanting to go in depth or into detail about schematic stuff. And, especially when these coaches could talk circles around any of us asking these questions when it comes to schematic stuff, right? So I don't expect him to sit there and do that. My curiosity really just was kind of what has changed from a game planning perspective, practice preparation, just overall the structure of the defense,
run
with Staley
defense,
being there,
trying to help with the run defense. Like that's something that I think we are all thinking about.
Yeah, and at a certain point, it'll work itself out when we start seeing game film pouring in and we start seeing, with our own eyes what's changing. But ultimately, it was I understood where he's coming from. I totally get it.
That's a good answer. That's a
great question, though. Yeah, and fantastic answer by you as well.
100%. Go ahead, Brian. What do you got?
Jordan, is there a bigger winner at training camp with both Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall being out than Danny Gray? Because he's a guy that we kind of had all buried coming into this. And the first couple of days, he's getting opportunities and making plays. And that's important because he's got to prove he's a good enough football player to make a roster. Like, he's a bubble player coming into camp.
If not now, when?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. And, I wasn't there. I was off yesterday. So today was my first day at camp. So I know from the first day, the reports were that Danny Gray was really good. So I went into this like, okay, this is a thing. Danny Gray season. It's a real thing. And I understand why. Like, he lived up to the hype. He looked like a guy that, is he going to go out and beat Brandon Ayuk? Like, absolutely not. But he looked like a guy that could be in a rotation of receivers on this team. And he looked like a guy that was confident, not only just, with how he was running his routes, but he looked confident once he had the ball. And he looked like a guy that had that burst and the explosion once the ball was in his hands. And again, this is a practice without pads. They're not tackling each other, but you can see the explosiveness that he possesses. I've always kind of thought with Danny Gray, one thing that got kind of, the narrative on him kind of seemed like people were like, oh, they got a deep threat for Trey Lance because Trey Lance has a really strong arm and they drafted Danny Gray so that he could throw the ball 50 yards downfield to him. if you go back and you watch SMU's, games when he was there, a lot of what he did was in the short to intermediate, where he was this yak threat, where he was getting the ball in short areas of the field and really using his legs to really rack up that yardage. And I think that oftentimes we equate just like a really fast guy as being a deep threat, and you lose sight of what he can do as a, run after catch threat, especially when you're talking about an offense that's kind of predicated on that. And you have so many other guys where even if he's not that, polished product from day one, now this is year 3 for him in the NFL. He's had time to watch and observe a Deebo Samuel, a Juwan Jennings, some of these guys that really make their living just being dynamic threats with the balls in their hands. So it was one practice, so I can't sit here and be like, oh my God, like Danny Gray, like he's making the roster, he's taking the NFL by storm in 2024, but he looks good. Like, and that's a good problem to have if you're the 49ers. If you have too many receivers and you're going to end up having to cut a few, that's a problem plenty of teams wish they could have. And hopefully for the 49ers sake, they are forced to make that decision because it means they were able to lock up Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall is healthy. And he was running around out there. He ran by in front of me a couple times off to the side. And so the fact that he's there, I think is a good sign. The fact that Ayuk is there, I think is a really good sign. The fact that he was there and he, I think a deal is going to get done there, right? It's a matter of when, not if. So I apologize for the long-winded answer, but yeah, Danny Gray season is very real. Very real.
Yeah.
And Jason, hold on. I got a follow up here because Danny Gray's old SMU quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, is now a San Francisco 49er, undrafted free agent quarterback. What's going on behind Brock Purdy on the depth chart? Do we have a good old fashioned battle? Tanner Mordecai, does he look like someone who is completely out of place at an NFL training camp? And what about the Dobbs and the backup battle, the QB2 battle with Brandon Allen?
The Pasternak disrespect is crazy. I just want to make sure we say that no one has a cooler nickname than that. Come on.
It is a fantastic nickname.
It is.
I think that Mordecai definitely, he's not going to stick around, right? Like, I think that the way the quarterback depth chart's going to stick out, I'd be shocked if there was any path to him staying on the roster. But I didn't think he looked terrible. Like, I just think it's a matter of, like, they have 3 proven guys ahead of him. Shameless plug, I wrote about the backup quarterback battle at NBC Sports Bay Area. You can go check that out. It was Tuesday, I think. So, yeah, again, shameless plug, throwing it out there. I think it's really interesting. And this is why, Brian. I think that the 49ers have this firsthand experience of losing a quarterback or quarterbacks, plural, mid-season when you have a team that's just loaded and ready to go. I think that Jimmy's ankle injury in 2020 really was like the wake-up call where it's like, okay, like we can't just get like a guy that's good in the QB room, good in practice, and good in the locker room. Like, we need somebody who can actually step in. And I don't think they need backups that can be the reason that they win games. Like, they don't need that. They just need a guy who's not going to go out there and absolutely tank and be the reason that they lose games. So when I'm watching both of these guys, for me, like in my lens, I'm kind of like, who's making the fewest mistakes rather than like who's going out there and really wowing me. And I thought today it was kind of even, but the thing I keep coming back to is Josh Dobbs has rushing floor. And I think that rushing floor for any backup is so valuable. And rushing floor to me is when you take away everything and everything's equal, right? A guy who has rushing floor can give you at minimum something with their legs, right? Like, they may not go out there and, nobody's going to go out there and throw the ball as efficiently as Brock Purdy if they're coming in for him, right? But a guy like Josh Dobbs might be able to keep the offense, I don't want to say on life support, because that sounds very like dark, but like, it's you can keep a team afloat, right? Like, you can keep a team in a football game if Brock Purdy has to miss a quarter or two, or he has to miss a week or two. And to me, Josh Dobbs is a guy that, like, if I'm weighing the pros and cons of both of these guys, Josh Dobbs is somebody where if like the Niners are stuck in a pinch and they really need a guy to come in and win for a week or two, I feel like it's Josh Dobbs. And it's no disrespect to Brandon Allen. It's more so just like, we've seen Josh Dobbs as a starter, and we've seen highs and we've seen lows, right? Like, there was a roller coaster last year when he was starting for the Cardinals and Vikings. But when I keep coming back to this rushing floor, I apologize if I don't want to cite the wrong number, but I know I believe it was 5.4 5.47 yards a carry, I think, on like 77 rushing attempts. And Anthony Richardson averaged 5.4, and I think Kyler Murray averaged 5.5 with smaller sample sizes. So Josh Dobbs gave you the same rushing production that two proven dual threat quarterbacks were able to give you. And to have that as a backup quarterback, I think it'd be extremely valuable. And I think that he is a guy, if you really needed to lean on, you could feasibly talk yourself into the 49ers staying afloat with him. Look, if Brock Purdy gets hurt and he's out for the year, I'm sorry, like the season's over. I'm a pretty optimistic guy. It's over.
Yes.
But if something happens where you need somebody to fill in for a week, 2 weeks, or like last year when Purdy was in concussion protocol, you didn't know if he was going to be able to start for a week. Like, say what you want about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold can win you a football game for a week. I think as long as the 49ers have that, they'll be okay. And right now, I would lean Dobbs if I had to pick between them, just because I like the rushing floor and I've seen him be able to do it in a small sample size.
I think that's the crux of any backup quarterback, is that the more you see of them, eventually the cracks are going to show, right? Like very rarely does a quarterback just come in and just kind of save the season. So, and I feel how you feel, because the 49ers already run the ball a ton. So all you're going to do is essentially stick with that. Now you're adding the added weapon of Dobbs' legs, who can improvise, stuff like that. So yeah, I would have put him firmly in the second role. I think, if you follow the money, you feel the same way. I kind of wanted to stick with offense too. Somebody that I loved during the draft process, and I for once asked the 49ers to draft, and they actually drafted, was Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing is getting a little bit more run now, obviously, with Pearsall and Ayuk. Obviously, it's not with the ones. It'll be with the twos. What did you think of Cowing today? Because I think there's a lot of people that are excited about the prospects of him, kind of equating him to Taylor Gabriel in the Atlanta offense with a little bit more juice, I think.
To be completely honest with you, I went through my notes. I didn't have anything specific from Cowing. And that, again, that's just because I was running around doing a lot. So I don't want to offer an opinion on something that I don't have substantial notes on. So I unfortunately probably am not the best guy to ask about today about Cowing, just because I went through and double checked just to make sure. And unfortunately that he was a guy I didn't have in my notes.
That's fine. I mean, look, Brad Graham was raving about him, said that he had 2 nice catches, and we all trust Brad and everything as well too.
If Brad Graham's raving about a guy, you might as well get the Canton bust ready. Like, go get the Hall of Fame bust ready, get the gold jacket measurements. Like, it's pretty much set in stone at that point.
Brad's full of shit. If he was a real man, he'd shave off that beard and just keep the stash. Okay,
keep the mustache, dude.
Yeah.
Oh man. Hey, I'll tell you what. I was walking by the side and I looked up and saw him in the bleachers. That man was vibing. He having the time of his life.
Yep.
He's up there dancing in the top row. I warmed my heart. Could not have made me happier seeing this man.
Dude, nobody's happier to have this back around than him, and nobody, dude. He's literally on 2. He's on 2 phones, one for content, one for tweeting, and it's so, and you know how it is, because we've all been in camp, right? If you have your phone out, you're gonna get yelled at by the ushers or whatever. And it's not like Brad is just some guy who can like hide out or anything like that. So he's doing like 4 jobs at once and still able to put out information. This is his time, man. This is like his Christmas.
It's like bigger than, it's like Christmas and like every other holiday combined. This is like the biggest month of the year for Brad. Like, and I can't blame him. Like, it's fun, dude, having football back in the air, and like, especially for me, like, right, like I've spent the last couple months doing a lot of like basketball and baseball, hockey. Sharks are back, by the way. I know a lot of Bay Area folks in here watching. Sharks are back. Get excited.
Do we need to be pumped about that new draft pick for the Sharks?
Dude, celebrating. Yeah, absolutely, dude. The farm is loaded. They have so many good players. They shore up the defense. They're going to be great. I don't want to hijack Jason.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I don't want to hijack it with hockey, but
it's fine.
It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be a fun couple years.
I figured it would be that, or it would be Premier League soccer or something like that that'll end up coming up, because I know you're locked in at like 6 a.m. out there on the West Coast.
You got a couple of weeks of clearance before that, dude. You're lucky. You caught me at a good time.
Dude, so we have a question real quick, and we don't want to keep you for too much longer, man. Thank you again. And if you guys don't know, and I don't know how you don't, Jordan Elliott, NBC Bay Area, also defensive tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know how he's doing both. And Splash Cousin on Twitter. Make sure you follow him with his NBC Sports. But the question comes in, is Guerrero this year's Latu? So I saw this kind of floated out there that, with the struggles that Latu had, it felt like the 49ers used the injury as a way to redshirt him and hide him and not put him in a practice squad spot. It does sound like there's issues that are coming up with people who have seen him in terms of vision. Hamstrings tend to linger. Do you feel that, I mean, obviously you've been there just one day. Do you feel like this is something that it could be, or is this an outcome that, I don't know, is likely, but it could be on the table for Garendo?
I mean, yeah, like unfortunately it's within the range of outcomes, but I think it's far too early to say that he's underwhelming or has underwhelmed. I think the biggest thing with Latu wasn't really camp. If my memory serves, it was more like the preseason games. I think he had a few drops in those preseason games where I think it's a little bit more amplified. They're obviously televised. People are watching, whereas practice, stuff happens in practice. You have so many of them. It's easy to get over a couple bad reps. I wasn't there for the first day when Garendo got hurt. I believe he got hurt yesterday. So I didn't get a chance to see him. I've seen his tape from Louisville. It was kind of one of those ones where people really telegraphed that move. It was like, hey, this is like, a one cut zone scheme Shanahan back.
I mean,
like he would be fast,
strong,
yeah.
big at the combine. I was just like, pack your bags, man. You're headed to Santa Clara.
You
pal.
are a Niner, pal.
You are a San Francisco 49er, pal.
But yeah, I mean, it could happen. And honestly, like, I'm not completely out on Latu for whatever it's worth. Like, I thought that it's really hard to make it to the NFL in the first place, right? And then to make it to the NFL, and then in your first year of acclimating, your first couple months of really getting into the swing of things, to get hurt and then miss time like that, like it's really difficult. And I think it stunts growth. So I think it's far too like soon to be like, hey, like Cam Latu is a bust. Like they missed on this pick. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate when you spend a 3rd round pick on a tight end or a kicker, and
what is you see what I gotta do, Brian? You see what I gotta do?
Yeah, you know what? Never mind. Let's get Brad on here. Never say something like that.
But yeah, no, I get it. Like it's hard when you see a pick that's taken day 1 or day 2, and you don't get to see him on the field their rookie season.
Right.
I don't think Garendo's going to be a guy who misses the entire year. I do think, however, like the 49ers have a couple backs ahead of him where his path to getting carries might just be blocked from who's in front of him rather than anything that's an indictment on him.
Elijah Mitchell could be healthy. It's entirely possible.
And McCaffrey's McCaffrey, right? And I was shocked at how much work McCaffrey got last year. I'll be honest. Like, I lost some people some fantasy leagues immediately. We're like, hey, should I take McCaffrey? I'm like, dude,
I'm not taking him number 1. No way. Me too. I was like, I'm in on Justin Jefferson. I was like, I'm out on that idea. Like,
yeah, I was like, dude, Kyle's gonna load manage him. He's gonna be saving for the playoffs. Like you'll get some good weeks, but not, dude. And he got what, like 350 carries and had like 23 touchdowns. Like, I don't think it's going to happen like that again. I think that they're going to be a little bit more vigilant with his workload, but Jordan Mason's looked really good the first couple of days. He's looking explosive.
As usual.
He's looking good. McCaffrey really praised his all-around game. Christian McCaffrey today at the podium said he's turning into a complete player, and he praised his ability to, he said he's always been able to do this stuff, but now he's been able to do it consistently. So I think Mason has a path to getting a lot of the rushing volume as well. So when you talk about McCaffrey and Mitchell and Mason and these guys who've kind of been there, done that, and proven themselves, Garendo could be fully healthy. He could be a good player that they have a lot of belief in, and his
stuff for him.
Yeah, and his production might not reflect it just because, unfortunately, hey pal, sorry, you're on a really good team. Like,
and the Garendo injury is just going to open up a path to Cody Schrader being everybody's preseason darling too. He's going to go ape in the second half of those preseason games. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. And that's the to me the funnest time of the whole these whole 6 weeks or whatever till the regular season starts is when you start getting into these preseason games and it's like second, third stringers, and you just have players that start going off and everybody falls in love with them, and then you kind of have to like scale it back and be like I don't know, they're going against third stringers. Can they do this against ones? Like, I don't know. And it's like this fun, like mental gymnastics that you go through where it's like, you see the vision with a player, but you also kind of have to hold off because they're playing against guys that like aren't going to be on rosters in the next 10 days or so. So I'm looking forward to it. He will definitely be on my list of guys to watch in that second half of preseason games.
Jordan, I appreciate it, man. Brian, you got anything else? You have one more thing?
No, I just want to tell everybody to read his stuff. I put the link in the chat earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Check out all the work at NBC Sports Bay Area by Jordan. Follow him on Twitter at Splash Cousin, right? I think you changed your handle at one point and then you went back.
I did. I got bullied into changing it back.
Yeah.
I tried to be more like,
I'm glad,
just like normal with a normal name, and people were like, "This is terrible. You're an awful person. Change it back." So I got, I got pushed into a corner a little bit, but we're back, and I'm stuck with it now.
Croc tries to do that to me too. He's like, why 2103? I'm like, it's too late. I have like almost like 43,000 tweets with this. I was like, if I have to try to look it up and it's different, I was like, it's too late now. I'm backed in. Like it's locked in. Just figure it out, man. It's 2103.
I didn't think of the looking up old tweets angle.
Correct. How am I supposed to show everybody that I'm a clairvoyant football analyst if I'm not able to just immediately find my tweet and just put it in a search?
Are your old takes that good though?
Oh yeah, I said
better for your career if it was just a different handle altogether.
Well, yeah, just start with a clean slate.
Just start with a clean. Well, look, I mean, I was riding high in the draft. I was like, as soon as I saw Isaac Guerrero in the combine, I literally sent the tweet like, "You are a 49er," and I had to pull that right back up. And then some of my old takes are pretty bad, actually. You know, like I'm not gonna hold you. So, but I don't go looking for those. You don't go looking for the bad ones. You go looking for the good ones.
Yeah, because you remember the good ones. You're like, oh yeah, I got a tweet about that. Let me go find it.
Yeah, and you hope nobody finds the bad ones.
And selfishly, I can't tell you how many times I've actually looked up his handle trying to find like a thread that we were in like years ago. Like if I have to go like digging for like a crazy Rich Madrid interaction, half the time like something Jason said will help me find it and I can look it up. And if I lose access to that, I might actually like cry, dude. If I like lose all of these like core Rich Madrid memories, like it'll be a tough day for me.
Look, because you know we got like 5 more minutes. I don't want to keep Brian too long. You mentioned Cam Latu and Kyle Shanahan when he was first asked about Cam Latu being the tight end too, and I don't know when it was. I think it was like right after the draft because I think we all assumed the 49ers were going to draft a tight end too. When he was asked, all I could think about is just the Rich voice. They're like, "Is Cam Latu the tight end too?" And he was like, "No." He just said it just like that. Like, dude, like not even leaving the door open. It's just like, God, no. Oh, he's so upset at the conversation.
Dude, Rich is out here. Like, I feel like he's like so hungry for football that he's just out here tweeting whatever. He tweeted something like yesterday, or maybe it was earlier today, where it was like, Brock Purdy's like better than Jimmy, but then he spent like he wrote like a novel about like how their turnover worthy plays are similar. I'm like, dude, you didn't need to send this whole Declaration of Independence after the first sentence. Like, he's better than Jimmy. We all know it. Like, save the like. No, he's like, oh, right. I don't know, man. I mean, there's just luck with turnovers. He's all right. Like, they could win with him, but like,
oh my God. See,
hey,
now
it's a election year too, so he's
dude,
got a lot
that's
right now.
Look, let's not do that here also. But now see, like this interaction is giving me super FOMO about training camp. But hey, Jordan, appreciate you, man. Appreciate you doing this, man. Tell everybody again one more time where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't tweet as much anymore. Sadly, you know, probably good for some people, most people, sad for me and maybe a few others. So I don't really put too much stuff on Twitter anymore. I might from stuff I see at practice or whatever, but it'll be end of the day when I'm done with the stuff I'm doing during work. But yeah, you can find me at NBC Sports Bay Area. Great stuff from you know, everybody there. It's a lot of stuff too. So it's 49ers, Sharks, Warriors, Niners, Kings, A's, anything
A's.
really with Northern California sport. Hey man, Oakland A's getting hot lately. Law Dog, Lawrence Butler. I mean,
lot more fun to watch than the New York Yankees.
And I was gonna say, and the Giants, but you know, that's a story for another day.
True. All true. I'll see you Tuesday, Jordan. If you're going to be there, I'll be at camp.
I'm off Tuesday, but I might be going with Brad. So hopefully that works out because I will see you for sure then.
Bunch of tall guys hanging out talking football.
We'll bully him into getting that mustache.
Hey, if Brad does it, I'll do it.
Oh hell yeah, let's go.
If the both of you do it, I'll do it.
Oh man.
Let's go.
Jordan,
Kyle's gonna do it too. Kyle's gonna come back in like 2 weeks, and you're just gonna start seeing it slowly come back. He's like, I couldn't let it go. I needed to bring it back.
I think it's the mojo that Kyle needed to get over the hump. To be honest with you,
it's the last part of Andy Reid's, part. Look, oh, here we go. Look. All right, look, I wanted to end on like semi-football, but like Brad is here, and if I don't know if Brad's like ready to go. Like Brad, I'll send you the link if you want to jump in. But Brad, there's an offer out there. If you go to the mustache, then Peacock will go to the mustache, and I'll go to the mustache. I will cut this glorious beard that I've grown for. Oh God, 3 years, and I will make it. Look, send it. All right, I'll send the link to. I'm gonna DM it right now to Brad to get him on here. So you will do it. You're good for a little bit, like maybe like 10 more minutes, Brian.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I'm not gonna go anywhere if we're gonna get everybody.
All right,
George, just stick the party going. I'm not gonna end it. No way.
Yeah, just stick around real quick. And while I send this in to Brad, Jordan, Malik Mustafa. I think everybody's super excited. Today I saw with the ones, George Odom was out there first, and Malik Mustafa was in there. I think a lot of people are interested in what that looks like, especially with the idea that Hufanga might not be ready week 1. What did you see today?
Oh, he looks good. I know Sorensen talked about how they really like his instincts, and I think he's a guy where he got, people kind of tried to pigeonhole him into being like a linebacker safety hybrid, and didn't really, kind of what they've done with Hufanga too, where it's like you're not really appreciating that this guy has the range to hold his own on the back end. And so far from what I've seen, I think he's definitely capable of it. And then you also, we haven't really gotten to see what you could argue is the best part of his game, his ability to really get physical when he's hitting guys. Like his tape at Wake Forest was incredible with some of the punishment he was able to hand out when he was hitting guys. So I'm excited about it. I'm really, eager to see kind of how they manage things, but also it seems like Hufanga they're optimistic he will be back by the start of the season. So I think you start getting into this mode where it's like, in an ideal world, you just throw him out there week 1, but you need time to get your body right. You need time to start getting those reps in. For now, it seems like they're okay taking it slow. Are they going to ramp it up closer to the season? Or are they going to get into a spot where maybe Mustafa does have to start for the first couple of weeks, and then you kind of ease Hufanga back into it? But, like if he's healthy, he's going to be the guy, right? But it's just a matter of like, there's a difference between being healthy and being like in football shape and ready to step on the field and play. And I think that while him being healthy is close on the horizon, it might take some time for him to be 100% again, right?
My goodness. I mean, they're in an NFL Red Zone, there's the Octo Box. This might be the ultimate quad box right here, man. I mean, Brad Graham in the stands, Jordan Elliott on the field. Brad, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Brad, I got to tell you, I tried to stick up for you earlier. Jordan said you were full of shit, and I had to stick up for you and say that was not the case. I trust your judgment and your scouting ability.
Well, looking at Jordan's mustache, I think he's full of something too. But no, I'm doing phenomenal. No, so what's the bet with the mustache? We're shaving. We're shaving everything.
So
the vibe.
So Jordan says that he might be talked into getting rid of it, but Brian says that if you do it, he'll do it, and then if he does it, then I think I have to do it. But I'll tell you this, I'm gonna do it like literally sobbing, because it literally took the entire world shutting down for my beard to even come to fruition just a little bit. And that was in 2020. We're in 2024, and I don't know how I'm gonna explain it, but hey man, I gotta roll with the vibes, right?
No, in all seriousness, the locks, the mustache, glorious. But I don't know if I can ever make that transition. I don't think my kids have ever seen my face without facial hair, and I probably freak them out. I think I got to rock with the beard. I don't know if I could do that one. Maybe we can figure something out.
I don't want a mustache either.
Good. This is perfect, because I didn't want to do it either. Do you know how like the stock would have like hit the basement? Like if I'm just like without like what I've been able to grow. Brad, real quick.
I got a picture of myself with a mustache because I had a mustache growing contest about 10 years ago with the guy I worked with. So I've got proof that I've done it, and I think that's enough for me. I don't need to go back there. I've got proof of a lot of different hair I had.
Did you win? I feel like you definitely won, right?
No, you know what? I bowed out. Okay. I don't remember what happened. It just got itchy or something one day, or maybe I was just shaving around it and I screwed up and I took too much off, and I was like, well, now it's looking a little weird. And you can't have a little short mustache just right in the middle of your top lip, right? That's not a look you could really have. So I had to just shave the whole thing, and I think that's why I lost. It was just bad technique. I'm not a mustache guy.
I can't do it either. I mean, all I ever had was the goatee before, and it was very thin. And again, like all of this is just it's just 4 years of letting it accumulate. But Brad, you were at practice today. I asked Jordan, and Jordan, obviously it's hard to like track everything. I want to know about Jacob Cowing, man.
I mean,
what do you think?
I didn't see the whole missed punt. Did you see that, Jordan? Like no. Where he dropped it and apparently got yelled at or something?
Oh no, I didn't see that.
I thought that was Ronnie Bell that they said he fumbled 2 punts. This is my favorite time of year. Conflicting reports. and training camp videos. Like I live for this time.
I saw Nick Wagner had kind of talked about how there was a drop punt by Cowing, and apparently, like Kyle Shanahan kind of barked at him or whatever. But to be perfectly honest, I don't. That's not a surprise to me at all for a rookie in his second day in the NFL of like real training camp practices. You drop a punt, you get chewed out. Like that's the life of being a football player, right? Like you miss a rep, you miss something in practice, your coach is gonna come down your alley. So I'm not too concerned about that. But what I did see was Jacob Cowing make 2 catches in team period. Now it wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't anything like, oh my, ooh. It was just nice. It was solid. And he was able to showcase some of his yards after catch ability. And again, Jacob Cowing is just a smooth athlete. And I think that was my biggest takeaway is once he had the ball in his hand, he was able to kind of get upfield up the right side. He moved pretty well. Other than that, it was pretty, it's 2 catches. It wasn't anything crazy, right?
Were you guys able to get any clues about the new kick return? Was there?
Great question.
Did it look weird? Did it look like they were trying something unexpected out there? Could you even get a feel for it at all with the new rules for the kick returns and kickoffs?
Did you see anything, Jordan? I didn't. I saw them do they did like the team drill where they try to kick the field goal kind of in a 2-minute drill kind of setting. But that was it. They were just kicking field goals. I didn't see anything heavily special teams related. Felt like today was predominantly team periods, right? Like we've seen them break out into special teams periods, but today was a lot of team.
I wonder if they're
today was a lot
saving
of
some of
team
the stuff.
Yeah, and today was a lot of team, and like the beginning part of practice, the only thing I saw them doing was like punt return. I didn't see them do any kickoffs. They were definitely doing punt return, but I didn't see.
They weren't practicing field
kickoffs.
goals. Man, shame on this team. They're not doing the right
no,
thing.
they were.
Let me tell you what, Jake Moody was booting him through the uprights. Pal.
Booting him, yeah,
Owning you.
great.
Every kick, owning you. He like the
Owning me. I want him to make the kicks.
He's imagining your head right there, which Mitch Wisnowski holding your head on that turf, buddy.
It's crazy that both specialists hate my guts probably, and that's insane. Like to have like of all the people that it could be. But let me ask you guys, and I guess I'll start with Jordan and then Brad. So obviously the Drake Greenlaw thing is going to be something that isn't going to be week 1. Devondre Campbell seems like a signing that is someone who is stable, who has played. I think he's far removed from, the all-pro seasons that he's had. I think he's a lot better or at least he's known as someone who covers very well as a linebacker. But Fred Warner said that D Winters was the best player at OTAs, and Kyle Shanahan wouldn't stop talking about him, even when asked about Jair Brown. What are the chances that maybe D Winters enters this fray as the guy who replaces just a little bit for Greenlaw? What do you think, Jordan, first, and then Brad?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You got to think about when, Dre Greenlaw got that job, and, I don't know if it's like a similar situation because it happened during the season, but, you had a proven guy in Quan Alexander, and then you had this rookie linebacker who came in, and obviously D Winters is in year 2 now, so it's not, a perfect analogy here. But I think that there's always going to be upside with youth at the linebacker position because of how explosive you have to be and how much ground you have to cover laterally. So I do think that that's an area where a D Winters or a Jalen Graham has a little bit of an edge over a Devondre Campbell, where, it's balanced out by the experience and the, the pedigree that Campbell has. But if you can start getting to a baseline level of consistency with a player like D Winters, when you start thinking about the, the explosion and the upside that you get athletically, it might be really hard for them to keep him on the shelf for a second season, especially in a spot where you don't know how long you're going to be without Greenlaw for. And, I think that Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw's symbiotic relationship is so incredible because I think they're both very similar. Like they're both high energy players that cover a lot of ground. But the way that Dre Greenlaw fits against the run and just the way that he tackles, I think fires up the 10 other guys around him. And he just has this energy to him that I think transcends just traditional production and what you'd ask of a linebacker. So I think regardless, whoever fills in for him, there's going to be that void where you're kind of really missing I would say Fred Warner is the brains of the defense, but Dre Greenlaw is the heart of the defense. So how do you overcome that obstacle? And maybe can one of those younger guys play with that kind of similar fire that, nobody's going to be Dre Greenlaw, but you can at least try to help fill the void a little bit, if that makes sense, in terms of just playing with that fire and intensity.
Yeah, and to like piggyback off what Jordan was saying, like that's a phenomenal point because of what Dre Greenlaw brings to the table. You're not necessarily like replacing him. You're just trying to fill that gap. And I did see a scenario today in practice. Now, obviously, we know they rotate a lot, especially on the defensive side as kind of team periods progress. But it was, they were in 4-3 base down, and it was Fred Warner, DeAndre Campbell, and D Winters out on the field, kind of in that first team rotation. And I was like, oh, that's good to see. We saw one particular rep where D Winters was covering Deebo Samuel. And while Deebo Samuel makes a phenomenal catch where Brock Purdy puts the ball only where Deebo could get it, D Winters was right there draped in coverage. So I'm really excited what he could do because I think we've all seen the glimpses of it. I think we just got to see it more consistently.
100%. Brian, you got questions for these two gentlemen who are actually lucky enough to be at camp today?
I just want to say that somebody in the chat says Jordan looks like an extra in a Skinamax movie. Come on,
Jordan. I'll give you Jordan. I'll give you two guesses as to who is the commenter that said that you're probably only going to need one.
Oh, I know exactly. It's the GOAT, man. It's JKBG, the GOAT, dude.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
And anybody else would say that, I might, get a little down, feel a little, dude, that's just, it's giving me life now. Like I've missed JKBG's comments so much because unfortunately, Jason's gotten really big. He never has me on his channel anymore.
Don't do that.
Sorry for a different day. We'll talk about it another time, but
Don't do that. These comments are how you know football's back. But Brian, let's get this back on the track. What other questions do you have for these guys?
I think the last position group we haven't really talked a lot about is the D line, the new look D line, retooled. Obviously, we know what to expect from Nick Bosa. I expect a better year from, and obviously everyone comes in with in the best shape of their lives, but a lot of guys in really great shape there on the defensive line. But the newcomers, Malik Collins and Yetur Gross-Matos, and of course Leonard Floyd rushing from the outside. Have you seen any early returns from those guys? It's a different look. Is it a defensive line that you guys see out there? Is like, okay, they're still dominating in practice like they do in years past?
You want to take this one,
Brad,
Jordan?
Yeah, sure. It's hard right now because I think that the offensive line's at a disadvantage without pads, right? So I think that a lot of these reps, it's really hard to kind of say like, hey, you got dominated when you're at a severe disadvantage. But, it's not the same level of like, I don't think they're instilling the same level of fear as they did before, right? Like I think before you had so many guys that were these household names that, you could throw out 4 guys that are all pretty much damn near Pro Bowl level players, right? I don't think they quite have that anymore, but they have a tremendous amount of depth. And like, I really do like a couple of the moves they made. I think that the Malik Collins trade is very fascinating to me because I think he's a guy that can really be a disruptor rushing from the interior. He has a really nice, array of pass rushing moves that he's leaned on from the games I've seen. He has a really good spin move. He has a really good club swim move as well. He's somebody that I'm really, really intrigued by. Yetur Gross-Matos today really flashed that athleticism. He really looked like a guy where it's like that prototypical, hey, you get this athlete into Chris Koseric's system, and Chris Koseric's going to turn him into, a player that's probably going to get a bag somewhere else in a couple years because he's going to have so much production with the 49ers. It's going to be hard to retain him. He immediately looks like a guy like that. I will say the one player that really did stand out to me is Leonard Floyd. And Leonard Floyd is incredibly strong. Like he's very, like he's built, but he's very lean. And I think that his bend around the edge is really intriguing opposite Bosa when you have a guy that has the strength to really win with power, but also is lean enough to really have that get off and isn't going to be hampered down by maybe being a little bit heavier. And he's consistent. I think with a guy like that, you're giving Nick Bosa and that defensive line a player to complement them where it's like, hey, even if this guy's not going to go out and get you 15 sacks this year, he's going to probably get near double digits, and he's going to play in 15 or 16 games for you. And I think that's going to be extremely valuable for them going forward. So I think that it's not the fearsome unit it has been in years past, but I do think that there's a lot of depth there where it's not going to be an area of weakness or an area where it's like, oh, okay, they're getting gashed. The one area I really am intrigued to see, and it's way too early to make any judgments on, is how they're going to look against the run. I think at times against Detroit and Green Bay in the playoffs, they got pushed around a little bit on the inside, and you're losing a guy in Eric Armstead, who's one of the better run defenders on the interior in the league. Yeah, so that's where I'll really be intrigued to watch. But in terms of getting after the quarterback, I think they're going to be completely fine getting after quarterbacks and rushing the passer.
And before we go to Brad real quick, like Sorensen mentioned, like run fits and everything. I think that's all we're really thinking about right now at this point is about run defense. I think no matter what you think of this unit, and it may not be as fearsome, it's still formidable. And I think that's what it needs to be. Like it still needs to just be attacking, right? And I think Malik is your pass rusher, and I'm not even joking. Jordan Elliott's your run stuffer. Like that's literally like what they're trying to figure out, like how to like replace Eric Armstead with a few people. But Brad, what did you see today?
Yeah, so I think we talked about this before, but like I was kind of in a wait and see on Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott of NBC. I mean, the former Cleveland Browns.
Someone said that joke is getting old, and I don't see that joke ever getting old.
It will never get old to me.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it'll be an incredible stream if all four of us pull up with the mustache, and also I believe they sell Jordan Elliott jerseys at the stadium. I don't know if I've needed one more than the Jerick McKinnon jersey that is currently sitting in my closet right here.
That's definitely a quality jersey, but like as you know, with me, I've been super hyped on the potential of Yetur Gross-Matos and kind of that role that we've seen the 49ers have a ton of success with Arden Key kind of transitioning to Charles Omenihu. I was kind of hoping Cleveland Farrell could kind of fit into that mold, but he kind of felt like he just stayed out on an island and base downs, and that was about it. We didn't really see him shift down and rush from the interior. Really, he provided a decent rush off the edge. It just wasn't consistent in getting home and actually, garnering sack production. But from what I saw today, and again, granted to Jordan's point, the offensive line doesn't have any pads. So I tried to make the analogy like earlier on my stream was like, it might be a little dramatic, but it's kind of like trying to juggle with one hand tied behind your back. If you're an offensive lineman going up against a guy like Nick Bosa with no pads on, like it's just, you're already kind of lost the leverage battle because you can't grab as much and you can't really put your body into them. So that really changes your technique in a sense. But all things considered, I saw Malik Collins with what I noted as a would-be sack. I saw Jordan Elliott, not to be confused with our good friend here, Jordan Elliott, come through and made a really nice play.
Hold on, Jordan Elliott's on the field all of a sudden for this practice, and all of a sudden is generating pressure. Why would he do that? Come on, man.
And then, Jordan, did you see that play from YGM and Fred where they met in the backfield on Christian McCaffrey and how hyped everyone was? Like that play got me really excited because we know Fred, right? We know how fast and downhill he is. He's read and react. He triggers and goes. And to see YGM right next to him off, on the left side of the field meet Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, I was like, ooh, like that's what I've been waiting to see. So also we saw Kevin Givens bust through with a nice sack, would-be sack. He got through right away, but that was against the second team. But obviously we'll be able to give a much better evaluation once we get pads on. But I would say baseline, it was a great first day of kind of like getting a read because the 49ers offense early on was just really kind of stagnant. They really couldn't do much of anything. And again, we understand the context behind it, but a lot of it had to do with those guys up front, stuffing the running lanes and filling gaps and doing all those different types of things. So yeah, it's like what Jordan said. It's going to be more by committee, I would say, than we've seen in years past where you have like the four stout guys. But got a little bit more hope than I think I had previously when I first heard the signings.
Did you see?
Javon,
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you see the 2 reps that Jalen Moore had against Nick Bosa, where Bosa went to that inside spin and Moore ate him up, and he basically won both the reps where Bosa went to the inside? Did you catch those at all, Brad?
I didn't catch them specifically, but I caught multiple plays where Brock was within a clean pocket going up against Nick Bosa. I remember one particular rep, he went 1, 2, 3, 4, and just with all the time in the world, made it through all his reads, and no one got around him. So it wasn't all doom and gloom for Jalen Moore. It was just Nick did get Jalen Moore with a nice, like club kind of swipe move that sometimes you lose your hands as an offensive lineman. They got the edge on you. It happens. But yeah, so I didn't see anything where it was like definitively he was getting beaten like a drum, but I did see the one where Nick Bosa got him pretty good, but it's also Nick Bosa.
So for what I'm hearing from you guys is the 49ers can go ahead and trade Brandon Ayuk because Danny Gray's breaking out, and the 49ers can go ahead and trade Trent Williams because Jalen Moore is a guy. Can we go there? Can we go that far?
I want to go.
Brad already yesterday on the stream was like, I think Jalen Moore can replace Trent Williams easy. Like,
wow.
I said, get real. You see this guy, this Trent
you know
Williams?
what? Why would you pay Trent Williams when we've got Trent Williams at home?
Wow.
No,
hey,
but
Brian,
seriously,
you got a boogie, or you good?
Yeah, I got to get out of here in a few minutes. I do want to say, though, Javon Hargrave, I mean, this dude was a pure nose tackle, zero technique in Pittsburgh early in his career. He's too wide in the ass to be as bad against the run as he was last year. I think there was a lot more going on than just the talent with how bad the 49ers run fits were last year. So I expect them to be just better because, and I don't want to put it all on, the defensive coordinator, but there was something missing last year with the run defense and the missed tackles and the gaps just weren't sound. There was something just really off with that run defense last year. I think just being a new year, different coaching staff, different, just a few different changes here and there. I think the players themselves are going to be better just because of that. Because I can't see why Javon Hargrave would all of a sudden just not be good at stopping the run.
Dude,
so
and
for whatever it's worth,
we know him as a pass rusher. Real quick, Jordan. Like, we know him as a pass rusher, and we understand that that's what he was supposed to bring. But he was exceptionally bad at times, like being pushed across gaps at times, and it just looked crazy. So I agree with you on that, Jordan. What were you gonna say?
For what it's worth, today he talked about how hard the adjustment into the 49ers system is when you're accustomed to something else. Like, maybe it's not as bad for rookies entering the league. This is the first defensive system they've been in as a pro. But he spoke today about how this is his 3rd NFL team. He's been around, right? And he talked about how much of an adjustment it is. And someone followed up and asked, when did you really feel like you were, there 100% and you were really in the swing of things? He's like, honestly, I'm still getting it. Like, I'm still, still kind of dealing with the growing pains of it. So I do think that that's an area where, again, he has too much of a proven track record as a really good player. And he at times looked good. Like, to start the season last year, he looked incredible. Like, I probably oversold it, and that's my, that I'm not perfect. I'm not batting 1,000, but early on in the season, I'm like, man, this really has the potential to be one of the Niners' best free agent signings ever. Obviously nothing's going to top Deion Sanders, right? there's a list of guys where it's it's never going to be touched, but I'm thinking modern era 49ers, Javon Hargrave's out here just tearing guys up, and he's really complimenting Bosa and Armstead and these other guys they had on the line. Then he hurt his, I believe it was his hamstring later in the year, and he's one of those players where he's not going to make excuses, but I think it's totally fair to observe that injury probably lingered for a little while, and there probably were some residual effects from that. So between that and the scheme adjustment, I think it's fair to expect that this year will be a lot better for him. And like you said, it wasn't just the run fits. There was a lot of stuff last year where one of the saddest things about the Niners not winning the Super Bowl in 2021 or 2022 was the fact that they had DeMeco Ryans calling that defense, and just it seemed like every single time they needed the right call in the right spot, or they needed to make an adjustment in game, D'Amico pushed all the right buttons. And so I'm not going to sit here and pile on Steve Wilkes because I don't think that's fair. I just think that the bar was so high with D'Amico that we saw a lot of glaring inefficiencies that D'Amico helped cover up once Wilkes took over. And I think that there's a lot of pressure on Sorensen and Staley and however that dynamic works out to get back to that level that D'Amico and then Saleh before him had that defense operating at, because like I always go back to that Green Bay game in 2021, right? Like the Niners had absolutely no business winning that playoff game.
6 offensive points.
Yeah, you go back and you watch the way that D'Amico made adjustments in game and the way that he was able to counter what Green Bay was doing early to find success. Special coach, and it's no surprise Houston was as good as they were last year, and one of the reasons why I think they're like one of the 5 or 6 highest favored teams to win the Super Bowl this year in year 2, right? Like D'Amico Ryans is a special coach, and I think that the 49ers not having him last year, like losing D'Amico Ryans was as big of a deal as them losing any player I can remember in the last few years, including a guy like DeForest Buckner, right? Like, which is crazy to think about, but he was that good in my opinion. Like, I think that was the biggest issue.
Cool. So we're getting sad. Brad, anything to add about that?
I would just say to piggyback onto that, I go back to the Arizona Cardinals game. I think it was like week 4 last year where Nick Bosa was half a step away from sacking Dobbs on probably 4 or 5 different occasions. Like there wasn't a marriage between rush and coverage. It just felt like it was disjointed. And to kind of Jordan's point, you know, that could have been more a product of coaching than anything else. And when you look at Hargrave, to bring it back to him, you did see those glimpses. I mean, the Jaguars game for me, I thought he dominated. He had 1 sack. He created 2 other sacks with pressures. He was all over the field. And I even talked to him at the Super Bowl, and I brought up that game because to me, out of all the games I watched, that one stood out the most. And I was like, what was different about that game? And he was like, to be honest, I was just pissed off. You know, I didn't get good sleep that night. It was just like one of those games where it's like anxiety heading into it. And he said, I just played ball. And I think with Hargrave, you know, when you're learning a new scheme, right, sometimes your brain can be, slow you down from being able to execute on certain things. So, and he looks like he's in great shape too. So I'm excited to see him bounce back because I think he took, the ownership, took accountability, and said he needed to be better. He needed to be in better shape, and it seems like so far he's done that. So we'll see how that translates.
You got it, Brian. I don't know, man. I'm sad now. He brought up the loss of D'Amico was way worse, and he called the right things, and it's just like, oh my god, man.
Remember the he's done miracles on me, like D'Amico on the bench. Like,
the D'Amico, with the Kanye song. It's one of the best memes of all time. Look, if I could pivot
all the time, dude.
I literally think about this all the time. In the history of the world, this is my favorite thing. I actually wanted to kind of pivot to something funny, Brian. Receiver has been, really big on Netflix, and Devontae Adams wasn't happy with one James Garoppolo. But I saw Jimmy throw some darts over there in Los Angeles. Is that the missing piece for them to make the 49ers life hell is to bring in that handsome, salt and pepper beard?
Joe, I'm out. I'm done with the Jimmy Garoppolo conversation. I will say, though, my biggest takeaway from the receiver show was that quarterbacks are more compelling. The most compelling part of the whole program was the Jimmy Garoppolo stuff with the Raiders. And it was almost too wholesome. I thought wide receivers were supposed to be divas and all weird. They're all love their wives and stuff. And I was like, man, where are the maniacs? They weren't crazy.
Devontae Adams was going crazy. That was they should have just followed him the entire season. That would have been fine. That was the main draw.
The Jimmy and Devontae Adams stuff was the biggest. And even the Kirk Cousins Achilles thing kind of stole the show in one of those episodes as well. And so the quarterbacks are just more compelling than wide receivers is what I learned. And I wonder if Netflix just might do quarterback again next year, because I don't know what other position group, maybe corners, because they're out of
line, man. Come on.
Yeah, no, look, honestly, offense. Look, if you do offensive line,
it would be so boring. It would be so boring.
Look,
how many calories do you eat every day? They would just show all their meals every
6,000, 7,000 calories a day.
If they did offensive line, it would draw away the casual viewers, but you would get a glimpse of the smartest guys on the field. I
And
think
if you
the
got a
way
guy
that they-
like Trent, he would add some spice.
no,
to that.
look, all right, look. You get Trent, you get Quinn Miners, who's able to talk about what his journey all the way through, like to what he just got to.
Mhm.
You find two other like offensive linemen. You find somebody like Creed Humphrey. Obviously
Panay
then that
Sewell,
brings in the
maybe.
Chiefs. Panay
Yeah,
Sewell with Detroit again. Yeah, like you could really make it fun. But if you do corner, then you've got to go like Sauce, Patrick Surtain. I think if Patrick Peterson's still around, you've got to find a way to get him on the show so he can give you the old man stuff. That would be interesting too. But yeah, it would be really interesting to see the offensive line. In my opinion, you just would draw away the casual viewer.
Yeah, we need an offensive lineman to date a pop star or something.
Right, 100%. And you know what? I feel like that's more of a reflection on them than the offensive lineman. Brian, I know you got to get up out of here. Do you have anything that you want to ask these guys before we close up shop?
No, I gotta go. Just make sure that you subscribe up to the Aponte feed. Subscribe up to the Peacock feed on YouTube. I'm actually gonna go live a little bit later this evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time, with my guy Croc doing Locked On 49ers as well. So subscribe there. Got you covered every day on the Locked On Podcast Network. And make sure you hit up all these guys, these dudes. I love all the content that Brad and Jordan and obviously Aponte put out. If Aponte somehow gets a better Twitter handle, I would like that even more.
I'm not changing it.
And I appreciate the mustache, Jordan. Don't let people talk you out of it, man. Own it. You're owning it. I love it. Appreciate the content. Brad, love you guys. I'll see you guys. I'll be at camp on Tuesday, so hopefully see you there.
See you then, dude.
Right.
Good to see you.
Later. I'll close it out. I'll take care of it on the back end. I got you, man.
All right. See you, fellas.
All right. Hey, if I could pick your brains just for a little while longer while I'm here, and this is still going to be on Brian's stuff, so he's going to be able to at least see like what's going on a little bit more. So, I'll ask you first, Brad. So the Malik Mustafa stuff is really big right now, but George Odom was out there first. Is that a little bit of a reflection of, hey, veteran, we trust our vets, we trust our guys? Because apparently Malik Mustafa had a PBU and a near interception again today on a deeper route.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about like depth chart, especially with rookies that are, fourth round draft picks, you're definitely going to put the guys out there that have the veteran status, like a Georgia Odom out before. But, Malik, I think, I don't know, dude. That dude looks like a freak, man. Like it's crazy. And also too, like the hype that he's been able to garner just these last 2 days has been pretty solid. I didn't get a great look, honestly, at either one of the plays, which is why I didn't really report on it. I did see the pass breakup, but I didn't see how it developed. I just saw the collision. So I saw the kind of the bodies come together and the pass breakup, and I didn't really see the near interception. So I honestly wish I could provide better insight on that, but I wasn't really locked into that specific spot at that moment.
What about you, Jordan?
I mean, like I was saying earlier, I just think that he's somebody that has a lot of plus traits, and the instincts are what's really standing out to us, to the coaches. Sorensen talked about it earlier. It's just one of those things. I think the reason why Odom's out there first is the 49ers, I think, have a unspoken or unwritten rule, kind of like if there's a veteran who's been here, you're going to have to unseat them, even if we're really high on you. They're going to get the first crack at things. I think that they've been pretty consistent with that in the years I've watched them during camp. Not to say that you can't beat out a guy like Odom, but I do think that, he's a veteran, a proven player, and he's going to get the first crack at a job like that, especially early on in camp when you're really getting into the swing of installing your playbook, installing what kind of philosophy you want to have. And with the Niners this year, it's crazy. It's like normally you'd be like, oh, they have a new defensive coordinator. They might have 2 new defensive coordinators. I don't think any of us really know what role Brandon Staley is playing. I know he's assistant head coach and he's helping with meetings, offering suggestions and this and that. I just think that somebody with as bright of a defensive mind as he has, and again, with Brandon Staley, people get way too I think it's easy for people to, I don't want to say people, like it's very easy for people to get caught up in his record with the Chargers, right? And talk about all the things that went wrong with him as a head coach. But if you look at him when he was strictly a defensive coordinator and the work he did as a defensive assistant and as a defensive coordinator, his track record is incredible. So truthfully, I really don't factor in too much what he was doing as a head coach as much as I would factor in what he did as a defensive coordinator and when he was working specifically on one side of the ball. And so, like, to have a guy that has that kind of track record in the building, I would have a hard time thinking he's not having a heavy influence on what's happening, right?
Brad, how many times have we talked about that? Is the stink of the head coach overlaps what he's actually going to be able to do? And again, Anthony Lynn was the head coach of the Chargers, wasn't exactly successful, but nobody was up in arms when he became assistant head coach. It's just something about you looking at the Chargers and blaming Brandon Staley for everything. And I'm gonna let you guys go, but I'm gonna ask you guys one more question. Super Bowl hangover is very real, right? Like making it there and making it back. And it's hard to gauge basically just off one day of practice. Jordan, you've been there one day. Brad, you've been there one day. Does this team look like they are locked in and know exactly what they have in front of them and they're just going ahead with it and just, carrying on like this is another year? Or, was there a little bit of a time where you said, you know what, maybe they're just a little bit behind right now? And again, it's day 2. There's no sweeping statements that need to be made. So if there's no real answer, then go ahead. But I'm just trying to give a provocative question. I'll start with you, Brad.
I thought the offense started off a little bit sluggish today, but there was a sequence where Brock Purdy was dealing. He felt like he was in complete command of the offense. We throw that word aura around a lot lately, but you could just you could feel it. Like there's the franchise aura dripping off Brock, that he's just super confident. Like he knows where he wants to go with the ball. He's quick with his decisions, even from muddy pockets. He was making plays. And, I watched a lot of the offense, and so far, all things considered, it's hard not to feel confident in Brock when Brock feels confident. You know what I'm saying? Like when you can sense that and everything's kind of working around him. And also too, in regards to Super Bowl hangover, it's I think you can get, and Jordan might be able to speak to this more, being able to be more up close and personal with the players. But just from what I've seen, some of the videos, they feel like they're just I'm tired of, saying year 7, here we go, back at it again. The vibes I've been getting is just all right, we know what the goal is. We know what we need to do. And I haven't seen any lapses in practice. I thought today's energy was pretty good. So no hangover felt from my particular standpoint today. But I
Jordan,
have noticed some kind of body language stuff and some videos and stuff like that. But other than that, I haven't seen anything.
Jordan, what about you being on the field?
I don't believe in Super Bowl hangovers anymore. I've
Right.
gotten to the point. I don't think it's a real thing. I just think it's really hard to get to the Super Bowl, and it's just magnified when you lose one the year before. I'm sure there's a mental toll it takes, right? That's obvious. Doesn't need to be said. It sucks to lose the Super Bowl. It sucks to lose the Super Bowl twice. It sucks to lose NFC Championship games where your quarterback gets hurt, or you're right there on the verge of it in 2021. It sucks, but I don't think that it's this thing where it's if we think about it, right?
Oh,
the
is he frozen for you?
Am I frozen?
No. You're good. You're good.
Think about last season, right? 49ers made it to the Super Bowl. Were in a position to win the Super Bowl multiple times. They unfortunately didn't, but they were right there, right? Go back to 2022. They didn't lose the Super Bowl in 2022, but they arguably, in my opinion, 2022 would have been a worse feeling than losing the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes and a really good Chiefs team. You go to Philadelphia, you lose your quarterback 3 plays into the game, and you never even really know what's going to happen, right? And then to make matters worse, you go into Philly the next season and you absolutely dominate that team. And it's not the same exact team, but for the most part, both teams are pretty similar, right? And so you're left with this feeling we know we had this team that was capable of winning. We know that we could have won the Super Bowl. We were talented enough to win the Super Bowl, and it was taken from us because our quarterback had a freak injury 3 plays into the game. That didn't fester last season. They went out and they dominated. They finished 13-4, and they, one of those losses was with Sam Darnold playing against Carson Wentz, which is just crazy to think about in hindsight. So I don't think that
and funny enough, the backup quarterback for Patrick Mahomes is Carson Wentz, and the 49ers can't figure out how to beat either.
Crazy, right? And maybe that was all part of the plan. They're just doubling down. But
they're just like, hey, if we get there, we get there.
I just think that at the end of the day, like football's really hard, right? And it's really hard to stay healthy. And I think that's one of the biggest things. But if we look in recent history, right, like everybody's like, oh, the team that loses the Super Bowl never gets back. But a lot of times the margins are so close, right? So let's go back to 2019 really quick. The Niners are up 10 points with 7 minutes to go in the Super Bowl, right? Like if we simulate that game 100 times, the Niners win most of them. They unfortunately, in the one that matters, didn't, right? So let's say hypothetically Kansas City lost that game. How much changes between them losing that game and then the next season where they got back to the Super Bowl? They lost to the Bucks, but they got back, right? And you start getting into a situation where, okay, Kansas City loses in 2020. Then in 2021, what's the only thing that prevented them from going to the Super Bowl? Was the Bengals defense was just crazy for 3 quarters in the championship game, right? If the Bengals defense doesn't go on this insane, crazy run in the championship game, Kansas City makes it back right after losing a Super Bowl. We saw the Patriots do it a few years ago. They lost that Super Bowl to the Eagles, and then they came back the next year and beat the Rams, right? So it's not this like unprecedented thing. And when we start talking about the teams that like don't do it, the margins are like really thin. And until we get to this point, right? Like with the 49ers, I wouldn't be concerned about it, and I don't think we will. But like with the Eagles last year, was anybody surprised that they lost when they did? Like I wasn't, because you could see the kind of seams ripping apart throughout the season. There was all these reports about players were unhappy, and there was, kind of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Coaching staff issues.
Yeah, coaching, exactly. Yeah, they're like, Matt Patricia was like the defensive coordinator for 3 weeks out of nowhere. Like the 49ers, it feels like the main issues they have are off-season contract disputes with players, right? That's the biggest kind of cloud hovering over the team. But once it's time to really lock in, like, and I know people are sick of it, right? Like I can appreciate that people are like, dude, I don't care, like win the Super Bowl. I'm so sick of being close, win the Super Bowl. I get it. But if we're able to kind of just acknowledge that and put that aside, like the 49ers really have built a culture that's it's tangible. You can feel it. And at practice, like you could feel this energy where it's like, hey, we're not coming out here like quest for 6 and, revenge tour and all that stuff is over. It's more just like, hey, we have a really good football team. Like, let's go out and play some football. Like we have a really good defense. We have great skill position players. And Brad alluded to it too. They have a quarterback that they all believe in. And I don't want to speak for anybody. I'm not going to speak for anybody. Would not be surprised if that wasn't the case for the years prior to Brock Purdy being there. And I think now most of the players on that team are like, hey, we may not have Patrick Mahomes playing quarterback for us, but we have a guy that we know can take us to where we need to go. And if we all do our job, we were this close to winning the Super Bowl. What's going to stop us from doing it this year? And so I think that belief that they have, and the fact that, I wouldn't want to speak for you guys, but like maybe you get to a point in life where it's like you've been kicked down so many times, like you're just playing free and you're like, hey, like I can't feel any more pain than I felt the last few years, right?
I'm
think about
dead
these guys
inside.
that have,
I'm super dead inside. Yeah, I haven't felt anything in like 3 years.
So think about how the players feel, right? Maybe like in a kind of twisted way, maybe that frees them up to play a little bit more. It's just like, hey, we don't know how many years left we have playing together. Like, let's go out, let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy the ride and enjoy playing. And there really is a sense of camaraderie there that I think is special. And it's really easy to lose focus when teams kind of don't win, right? Like think back to the Harbaugh years, right? How special those years were for all of us watching. That team lasted 3.5 years before it fell apart. Like we're going into what, year 8 now? Is this Kyle's 8th year?
If Fred's here for 7, right? This is Fred's 7th year, right?
So
8 years.
Eighth year, right? And this team, it feels like these guys
That's
really
crazy,
are playing for each other, right? So I apologize for the very long rant on it, but I think that there is
Jordan. I missed these.
Yes,
these
man. This is electric. Like once
this
everything
makes
like
sense.
just stay
Everything makes sense.
Keep
it all
going,
connects. I love it. I missed it.
Yeah, it's just this team. It's really simple, right? I'll cut my long ass answer short. This team's really good at football. They know they're really good at football, and they have fun playing football with each other. And I think the injury luck and all the other things that are kind of out of your control, cross that bridge when you get to it. For now, let's enjoy the fact that we have this really good team, because next year it could be gone. The year after it could be gone. Right now we have it. Let's roll and see what we can do. And I think that it's easy to say that, but they're doing it, and they're actually like employing that state of mind. It's not just, fluff that they're throwing out there in press conferences. They actually are acting like that day after day.
Hell yeah. All right, guys.
I can't add. There's nothing to add. He literally bodied.
Said every word in the English language.
No, not even. Look, no, but But again, this is why you're so good at what you do and everything as well too. But an hour 43, guys. Again, thank you guys for tuning in for the entire time. Shout out to Brad at the SF Niners. You know where to find all this content. Shout out to Jordan Elliott at Splash Cousin. That's where you find him on Twitter and NBC Bay Area. And again, Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. He's going to be on in a little while right on the same channel. So thank you guys for tuning in. It was a lot longer than I thought. I'm super wiped after I just watched Deadpool and Wolverine. But, hey, you know, like it's football season and it's time to get locked in and everything. But shout out to all you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys tap in with all these guys. And we'll be back tomorrow. And, you know, these guys, follow both of these guys and they're going to tell you everything that you need to know about camp. So thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Brad. I'm Jason. Peace. Welcome, everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.